Hello cattle, my name is Bone Crusher and this is Female Liquor and we're here to discuss some rather lovely cookbooks.
Don't cookbooks.
It's books about cannibalism today.
Yeah, so in the spirit of Halloween and Gothtober, the most gothic of all horror subgenres, the books where people eat people.
Midnight Snack. Turns out that books that are old tend to be much more obsessed with this than books that are new. Like, we're all prudes in the new age, aren't we?
I don't know about prudes, but there definitely seems to be less people eating going.
Yeah. So one of the oldest books that I've read, or one of the older books I've read about eating people, is A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift. That Jonathan Swift who wrote Gulliver's Travels.
Oh, the kids' book.
The kids' book, yeah, with the little people, and then he puts the fire out with pissing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wholesome children's book.
That is the thing you remember from Gulliver's Channel.
I mean,
the pissing.
You guys have read Gulliver's? Do you remember the pissing? Everybody remembers the pissing in Gulliver's Travels. Anyway, Jonathan Swift was a little bit political in his time, and he wrote a book called A Modest Proposal. It wasn't a book, it was more like a pamphlet. It was very short. And this is a really fascinating read, because Jonathan Swift proposes that in order to feed the starving masses, we should feed them kid. That is, children. This would solve the homelessness problem too, and that women of ill repute could double their income by making money off their offspring. Of course, this is a satire, and Swift was pointing out the barbarism of the society that he lived in by reflecting its own values back at it.
Still sounds creepy.
It's a very creepy little pamphlet from the 1700s.
The next one is a little bit more dystopian in tone. I think it's a much less... No, it's making the same point. It really is. It really is. It's a novel in translation from
Augustine Barrizzo.
The country of...
Oh, Argentina.
Thank you. Tender is the Flesh. Both of us read this last year, and it made a bit of an impact. The premise is that meat becomes inedible due to some virus. Because of this, the government sanctions the farming of humans for eating. So we get to see behind the scenes on the system where humans are farmed and culled and sold and eaten.
A few things I like about this. The behind the scenes that they're discussing, that is just a meat plant, but instead of cows, there are people in there. Discussion of class around this is really
super interesting.
Powerful. I really liked how it sort of starts off as this, should we eat people? And it's clearly based in the future where they're like, well, we're definitely eating people, so now we're going to make leather out of their skin and...
Yeah, let's not waste any of the people.
And it's sort of, this commercialisation of it has gone absolutely
think
nuts.
For me, the sort of analysis of capitalism in this book was horrifying and really interesting.
I think of all the books on the list, this is the bleakest, I would say.
Maybe.
This was...
They are all about eating people.
This was in my best 3 reads of last year, so it's a very high recommend for me. Another book that, well, this year hasn't finished, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be in my best 3 reads of this year, is Earthlings by Sayaka Murata.
This is a bit more surreal and a bit less, like, about cannibalism, rather than just sort of, like...
There's just some light cannibalism in it, just, you know...
Just a little bit of a nibble at the end.
Yeah, it's not a big theme. It just happens in it, like, you know, the same way that you might eat beans on toast for dinner.
I mean, not exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, you don't like beans. Yeah. This is a very literary work about this girl, Natsuki, who is...
What's her name?
Natsuki?
Natsuki?
Is that not a name? Have I perhaps made that name problematic in my
I
head?
just feel like that's like the most un-Japanese pronunciation of a Japanese name ever.
I think you're right, but I don't know how to speak Japanese. So Natsuki is abused, and Natsuki wants to run away, and she fantasizes about this other world, Papan Papapia.
Papan Papapia!
It's this little girl trying to make sense of the abuse in her life and the mistreatment and the societal injustices in her by sort of going into this fantasy world in her head. It's just this, it's so brilliantly done.
I think it's really interesting because as she grows up, it sort of branches into like a conscious divorce from society using the same detachment and dissociation mechanism.
Again, this is another book about cannibalism that is socially critical.
I don't think it's a happy society where you're eating peeps.
No, I don't. How could we possibly do a list of books without mentioning the Bard on this?
The next book is Titus and Andronicus, play rather than book, I guess. While the Cannibalism is really just a like a highlight of the overall gore and stabby nature of this play. It's definitely a highlight.
The thing is that, again, this is another book where the cannibalism happens later in the novel, rather
but it's
than...
a little bit reminiscent of that scene in The Help with the poop.
Yes, it definitely is. This is a trope that I think that everybody sort of actually knows about, this trope, and when they read it in Shakespeare, they sort of go, that's where it came from. I think that this is a really interesting work from Shakespeare because it's basically Shakespeare doing a Quentin Tarantino movie of, like...
Vast proportions, yeah.
You could just see then the stage direction, hand gets chopped off, blood spurts across the screen. There's a lot of violence in this
Yes.
thing, even by Shakespeare's tragedies standards.
Yes.
And it does crescendo into a little bit of...
Nibbling.
Yeah, just some digestion. Lastly, we're going to finish with a book called A String of Pearls.
Most of you will know this as its musical version featuring Helena Bonham Carter called Sweeney Todd. The story is the same familiar story. It's just its initial release in serialized form from 1746.
From 1847, and it was written by just 101 years off.
Shut up!
James Malcolm Rymer was the author of this novel, and it was a penny dreadful novel of its time. And I think it's really telling of the quality of this novel that the characters and the ideas still survive, but the original book does not. I did look before we filmed. You can actually read this on Scribd as an ebook, and I'm sure you can get it in various other places online.
Or you can just watch them. So that's it. That's 5 books about chewing on your neighbour. We hope you have a spooky Gothtober and a happy Halloween.
Best recipes in the comments section.